Welcome to 123 Go with Jay. In this video, I'm going to be upgrading my standard original park brake with the Billet Aluminum Park Brake from Slingmods. They can be purchased on their website for about $90. I wanted to upgrade because I wanted something a little bit more sturdy versus this hard plastic, and so this seemed to be the best choice. First thing I have to do is remove the air box from the air intake filter. I believe this is on the CVT side. So if you're familiar with the Ryker, you know that your bike has two air intakes. One is for the CVT and the other is for your actual engine air intake. So that was pretty easy to do. Was able to pop it off by hand. Set that down somewhere where you won't get it scratched or banged up, because we all want our ride to be nice and crisp and fresh and like it's straight off the showroom floor. It's a really simple process. It's always good to have some tools around, so small socket set, some Torx, screws, screwdrivers is always good. So basically you have to go and unscrew the housing that's around the lock mechanism itself. And you're not going to take it all the way off. You're just going to take off the screw at the bottom that allows you to kind of pry it up. Just don't use too much force. I'm not sure exactly how rigid that plastic is. It does have a little give to it, but you only need to raise it up enough to be able to access the additional screws that are holding down the support base of the that hold the lock in place. Almost like a C-clamp style setup, but with screws. And as you can see, I'm doing this all in real time, so as I'm going through this, I definitely tried to edit the video down to take out things that weren't necessary, but at the same time, I wanted you to see that I did kind of fiddle around and I struggled a little bit trying to determine if this whole piece could come off, and at some point I realized that I just needed to leave it where it was. Next, I went towards the actual lever that actually pulls on the brake itself. I guess it's not necessarily the brake line, but it's a part of the actual mechanism. When you raise the brake, it contracts and extends a rod that actually goes somewhere into the bike to set the locks or set the brakes. So you have to loosen that up so that you can actually start to replace the lever itself, because it's going to connect directly to the lever once you have everything disassembled. Again, it's always nice to have a lot of hand tools around. What I found with the Ryker is my go-to seem to be the Torx, screwdrivers, and sockets. Occasionally a screwdriver. So now I'm just raising it up to make sure that I can see everything, I can access the rest of the screws. And I just pop the main support right off the end there. I'm almost there, almost done. All right, so once I made the choice that nothing else is coming off the bike, I decided to grab the sockets and release. There's, I believe, 2 screws there that need to be released that actually secure the base of the handbrake assembly in place. Basically, it keeps it from separating from the bike. This is actually what gives it that extra bit of reinforcement. If someone were to attempt to force it open, they'd actually be pulling against this particular bolted on assembly, and whichever is the weakest is going to probably break. So I imagine with the original OEM handbrake, it's going to probably be the plastic of the handbrake itself. But it's pretty easy work. It's always good to be organized, so take your time when you're removing bolts and screws. Make sure you place them somewhere where you can't kick them around. Be careful if you're in a garage that has gaps in the floor, because some of these screws and bolts and nuts that come off of the Can-Am Ryker, some of them vary in size and it's easy to lose track of them, possibly have one fall into one of the cracks. I've actually had that happen. Fortunately, I was able to fish it out, but it could have been catastrophic had it gone a little bit deeper and I didn't pay attention to where it fell. But I've definitely dropped a few screws working on the Can-Am Ryker. In particular, it happened when I was adding on the passenger pegs, and the screws are relatively small, so one of them got away from me. So a little fast forward, and I've released the bottom screws. Now I'm going for the top, and as you can see now, you can see the half shape, the half crescent C ring or clamp, whatever you want to call that. Not sure the technical term, but you had a good look at it. And as you see, once I released it, you could actually see the mechanism kind of drop just a little bit because it had no more tension on it. You have to excuse the camera work. I was in here by myself, so wanted to make sure you all were able to see everything and get a nice close-up. Again, the reason why I wanted to upgrade this was simply because the plastic just didn't seem sturdy enough for me. I didn't want anybody to be able to forcibly open my handbrake, even though I have the lock on it, because my Ryker was affected by the manufacturing concern where it could be started with something that was not the key. So it was definitely time for an upgrade, and I wanted something that was more rigid. So as you can see, I seated the brake mechanism right into the little indentation that's already in place there. And once I had it in, it was just a matter of just bolting the clamp back on top. So I went for it, and as you can see, got a good look at it. There's basically 4 screws on it, 4 points of contact that you have to screw down. So you want to get that in place first before you actually attempt to put the brake line back on, just so you don't have any additional tension pulling on it. And the whole process didn't take long at all, actually, probably 10 or 15 minutes. I probably could have done it faster than that if I wasn't trying to film, but I really wanted to move the camera around, give you all some different angles and perspectives to be able to observe this process. I'm sure there's probably other videos out there that are better, but hey, this is my page. Hope you enjoy. Pretty easy. Something else that you'll notice too is that I'm using a standard socket wrench. I did not use a torque wrench. Now I do have the manual that gives me it's a PDF that I purchased for about $25, and gives you all the torque settings for every single screw, bolt, nut, you name it on the Ryker. It lists everything in fine detail. If you really wanted to, you could disassemble the bike all the way down to the last bolt if you wanted to, and then reassemble it based on this particular guide. I believe it's the same one that the mechanics use whenever they're in the shop. Kind of handy to have, and nice little convenient feature is that it also has the estimated labor hours for different tasks to be completed. So that way, if you're curious about how much something may cost, that's one of the things that they use to kind of establish their baseline pricing for labor. So something to think about if you're interested. Let me know. I can send you a link to it and you can make your purchase, and it's been very helpful. But as you can see here, I'm just doing it just to hand tighten it. I'm not actually torquing it. I didn't want to strip anything or make it more difficult than it needed to be. And you are screwing into plastic, so into more metal. You're not going into plastic, so that's another thing. I believe there was some clamps that it's actually screwing into. You can kind of see one of them down there just below my left knuckle. So you're screwing into that. So again, a nice solid structure, but probably is it gonna stop somebody with a strong hand that really wants to pop that brake? Probably not. But by the time they do all of that, they've probably drawn attention to themselves, and you can handle that situation accordingly. But also I will say it gives you reassurance if you have children around and you don't want them, you might lose sight of them in the garage or in the house, and the first thing they do is go and play around your Ryker. This is a good opportunity to kind of make it a little more difficult for them to actually do anything that may cause them harm. So as you can see now, one thing I did have to do, there is tension on that line. So what I did was I partially opened or released the brake so that the insertion point was a little bit higher up, so that I could just easily place the brake line onto the post. So little trick there, because you're not going to be able to easily pull it with your hand. And I just hand thread the screw. I definitely encourage you, if you're doing any type of your work on the Ryker yourself, always hand thread every single thing that you start with when it comes to screws and bolts and nuts, because you want to make sure that you're not in a situation where you're going to strip your threading. So definitely make sure that you're hand threading to make sure that everything is going on smooth and steady before you actually start grabbing the hand tools. So there, took the torque screwdriver, and made sure everything was connected up. As you can see, it's not really a difficult screw to put on. If you're like me and you're observing this configuration, you kind of can see a design flaw where if somebody really knew the Ryker and really wanted to release that park brake, they could easily do it. If you're paying attention, you'll see exactly why I say that. But they would still need a few seconds to get to that point where they can do it. They'd still need some hand tools. So there's a little reassurance in that. Hopefully by the time they realize they could do something like that, my brake alarm is going off, or somebody sees it or I see it. And here I'm just double checking, just kind of backing the screw out to make sure that I didn't miss the threading. Make sure it's the correct screw. Sometimes that does happen. There we go. And that's the other thing too. I believe the kit came with some additional screws. So I decided to just stick with the original screw that was on the Ryker versus using the new screw that they sent me in the kit with the Billet Aluminum handbrake. So pretty much completed the process. Now I'm just going to start to reassemble everything. So in a moment I'll come back and screw the bottom of the plastic housing back down, and then you'll see me put the filter air box back on. We're good to go. Really simple process. Love these little small sockets. It's really convenient to have. I don't have to rotate my entire wrist all the way around. Put a little pressure on that thing. I wanted to make sure that it was going to be on there. I didn't want any vibrations or anything like that when I was riding, because the Ryker is, because of the plastic panels, it does make a little bit of noise. It clatters a little bit, so it's important to make sure everything is nice and snug when you put it all back on. So put the air box back on. There's a couple of little release pins underneath, so snap those in place, and there's my brake back in place. I got my key to test it out, and as you can see, the post goes in, slides out easily, no problem. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe. I really want to build this channel out, and I can't do it without your support. So definitely come check me out, and let's get active in these comments, and let's get out there and continue to stay safe, stay sharp, and just enjoy this beautiful opportunity that we have to get out and explore the world on 3 wheels.